Fourth episode of Video Nasty here, Wayne.
Yeah.
Our concluding chapter. And I've got to say, Wayne, I thank all our followers, Wayne, because Cannibal Holocaust was a great success.
It was, yes.
People were engaged, they were excited, as were we. And it feeds into the material, doesn't it?
To be honest, I was expecting that one to get the most interaction. So thank you, everybody who commented, everyone who sent some really nice compliments from our listeners. Thank you so much.
Mr. Echo.
Mr. Echo, yes, thank you,
You've always
Echo.
got to rep him.
Yeah, you're a legend, Echo. Yeah, that one got the most engagement. But we kind of knew that. We kind of knew that was the one that was going to spark the most interesting reactions.
Well, I think in that episode, I actually, to, quote myself, because I'm that way, clearly. Well, yes. We said that it's a name brand.
It is,
Cannibal
yeah.
Holocaust name brand. And we knew that would increase engagement. We knew that would be the one most discussed because it's more infamous, isn't it?
Yeah, well, if you'd said to me a few months ago, The Witch Who Came From the Sea, I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about.
See, but that's what's interesting, Wayne. You have to stick the popular one in. And then people think, okay, this is interesting. But maybe I did miss Don't Go in the House. Maybe I didn't listen to The Witch Who Came From the Sea. But now I enjoyed the Cannibal Holocaust episode. Now I'm going to go back and listen to them. And hopefully listen to this one.
Someone was listening to our Witch Who Came From the Sea recently, so thank you for that. But yeah, this brings us to the end of Video Nasty Month. It's a shame. I really enjoyed this month.
Our concluding chapter, Wayne.
It's gone by really fast.
Very good.
The research I found has been especially interesting this month. Just the ridiculousness of partly of why these films were banned or censored.
Or how prudent the British were in the 80s.
Exactly. It's so bloody ridiculous. Those poor dogs, those poor people's dogs being set off by these films.
Hey.
Yeah.
Stephen King predicted this in Cujo.
Yes. Oh God, yeah.
He knew the trouble that Video Nasties would cause.
While he was completely off his ass writing Cujo.
On cocaine, yes.
He was, yes.
Cocaine Steve.
That sounds like a psychedelic band.
Cocaine Steve and the Three Musketeers.
Exactly, yeah.
Exactly.
But yes,
there you go.
like you say...
But we've... Wayne, it is our very first Dario Argento film.
Mm-hmm.
We have reached Jolly Gold.
Yes. Do you feel, as a podcast... Argento is almost one of those names that you want to get to and you feel you kind of have to. Because what a guy. What a filmography.
Great man, great director.
Absolutely, yeah.
Rightfully called, Wayne, the Hitchcock of Italy.
I would not disagree with that whatsoever.
So let's examine that for a moment, right? The Hitchcock of Italy. Why is it you think he got this tag in the 70s? Was it purely the horror aspect, the thriller aspect? No, I'm going to counter that way. Mm-hmm. He's a visual storyteller.
Exactly. It's the style of the films. It's the visuals. It's how using camera work, using settings, which is especially prevalent in this film, that way. Not just the fact he did horror, because Hitchcock, obviously he specialised in horror, but he did other genres as well. But for me, it's the visual aspect. Like when we did Body Double, we talked about De Palma, his mastery of the visual medium. I think that's why Argento attracted that label, and I think it's very well deserved.
Wayne, you mentioned Body Double.
Yeah.
I would say, here's the thing, Wayne. I would actually say this is Argento's Body Double.
It is. I've written the exact same thing
You've
down.
got the same thing?
The very same thing.
You tart, Wayne.
Yeah.
So
I was just stealing your notes.
Is that what were you peeking at my notes?
I was peeking at your notes.
You
yeah.
devil.
Yes.
You devil. And why is it Argento's Body Double? For me, this is Argento's reaction to his critics that called him, in what Argento said, they would call him a murderer.
Did they think he was Deodato or something?
Yes. Misogynist.
Yeah.
All these labels that Argento was tagged with, De Palma was also.
Yeah.
And Body Double, as we explained in our Body Double episode, which is a very good episode, people should check out. Was De Palma's comment on that.
Yeah.
And this is Argento's.
It's essentially someone said to the director, you are this, this, and this, and them turning around and saying, oh yeah? Check this out.
I'll show you.
You've not seen anything yet.
You think that trickle of blood was a lot? Check out this bucket, bitch.
Yeah, it's almost they used it as motivation. It was like fuel on the fire.
Exactly.
Like, right, I'm going to go out and make this goddamn film. You're going to hate this. No, people loved the hell out of it. Not the censors, of course. They were very unhappy with this film.
Do you know why this was censored, Wayne?
Because 1980s Britain.
I think so. Because here, Wayne, I don't actually know why was this censored?
Well, I actually interestingly have a list here. It's the nasties.
Right.
We have exposed breasts, belly impalement, throat slashing, face slashing, back slashing, axe to the head, axe to the back, shanking, arm amputation, brackets with bonus spurting, close brackets.
I'm going to ask you again. So why was it? So why was it on the list?
This is what we like to see in our horror films. Well, it's the typical things. It's it's the censor movie which we keep coming back to. That kind of thing. Oh, better take this out. This is unfair. This is objectionable, etc., etc. But like we say, this is Argento making a very Argento movie, just like Body Double was a very De Palma movie. It's very much leaning into what made them so famous. What's their whole style.
They're highlighting their own tropes.
Exactly.
They're playing with their tropes.
Yeah.
They're making their tropes what that film is.
And so, do you think it's also, you'd probably agree here, of kind of symbolic middle finger to the critics, to the people who denigrated their movies and said they were no good, they're misogynist, they're violent, etc.
It's a big fuck you, isn't
it? Basically is, yeah.
Because Dario Argento himself, he's a man, he's of the civil rights, he's of women's rights. He himself, he's not a misogynist, and this plays in, which we'll get into later, the Peter Neal character.
Yes.
And comments that certain critics within this film make towards the protagonist, Peter Neal.
There are direct lines of dialogue in this movie, which if you were just glossing over it, would just think it was part of the film, but when you research it, when you know the background of the film, you think that is aimed right at those people.
So let's get into some inspiration, Wayne. This film, to Dario Argento while he was working on an unproduced project in Los Angeles. Whilst he was in Los Angeles, he kept getting these phone calls in his hotel. There was this mysterious guy, and it was a man, who kept phoning him. They built up this dialogue. This man was a fan of Argento, but soon, after a while, these phone calls, Wayne, they turned sinister. So, because what happened is, he said to Argento, "You've ruined my life, now I'm going to ruin yours."
He blamed him for psychological damage brought on by his films.
Which caused Argento to flee to Italy, back to Italy.
Where he, I think, had either holed up in his hotel room or holed up in his house, and that's what gave him the inspiration to pen the script. Which in a way is brilliant, kind of taking this, what could have been a very dark time in his life, and essentially used it as inspiration.
Exactly, Wayne. We are working multiple levels here, the inspiration. We have got this maddened caller, don't we? We have these critics. We have, Wayne, here's the thing. This is 1982. This is his first official giallo in at least 5 years.
Since kind of mid to late 70s.
Because in the interim, he has made Suspiria, he has made Inferno, which he calls are two films of his Three Mothers trilogy. The third was supposed to come out after Inferno, but that was put on hold. He ended up making this film. So the third concluding chapter to the Three Mothers trilogy wouldn't happen to, I think, 2006, and it was called The Mothers of Tears. Mother of Tears. Never seen it, Wayne.
Belated, yeah.
Not good reviews. Very, very maligned film.
Is it one of those films where you have a master like Argento who years later is making a film, people are saying it fails because he's just trying to recapture the magic, he's trying to relive the glory days?
They become a pastiche of themselves.
Basically a parody of themselves,
I think that's what it's about. So what's them? We said the Three Mothers trilogy. If anybody's not familiar with Argento, each film deals with one of the titular mothers, a triumvirate of ancient witches whose powerful magic allows them to manipulate world events on a global scale, killing anyone who discovers their whereabouts, and who are determined to rule the world. Do you know where that's from, Wayne?
Where's that
That's
from?
Straight from Wikipedia.
Those sound like pretty empowered women there you're talking about in this misogynist filmography.
Suspiria played a little different with me.
It wasn't. It was a little bit different.
I don't know if that was exactly how I took a Suspiria there.
Because they were intended as the victims that were being stalked, etc.
Did you?
Well, yeah.
This global, conspiracy.
I suppose so.
I don't know if I picked up on that on Suspiria.
But like I'm saying, he's taking his criticisms and he's just throwing them back at his audience through this movie. Also, interesting we're talking about this here in 2022, because this film, 1982, the 40-year anniversary of Tenebrae, and I promise, even though I chose this film, it was not for that reason, because I didn't even realise until I was researching for it.
Completely accidental.
Exactly.
Who knew in Film Week Trust couldn't do math?
Well,
none of us knew.
Well, I certainly couldn't in school.
A happy accident, Wayne.
Yeah, but we can now. But yes, we're rounding up Video Nasty Month with the 40th year anniversary of Tenebrae.
Tenebrae, Wayne.
Return to form by Argento, like you say, a return to giallo films, like you say, inspired by this awkward psychological period in his life. And yeah, again, it's kind of him going back to his roots, because he'd done the supernatural with Suspiria and Inferno, and now he's coming back to this more, like you say, when we talked about giallo films like Barbarian, based on those old kind of mystery novels.
Almost like a whodunit thriller.
It's a whodunit, a mystery thriller, kind of like a Italian Hercule Poirot, we'll say.
But why did he return to giallo? Well, why did he give up giallo in the first place? He gave giallo up in the first place because he was sick of year after year of these directors, what he thought were ripping him off. Not only were they ripping off his work, they were also titling their films with some animal-based title. Famously, Argento would make The Bird with a Crystal Plumage. Yeah. Of course. What is the animal in that film, Wayne?
A bird.
Yeah, a bird, exactly. And then you would get Don't Torture a Duckling, etc. You'd get a plethora of films year after year with an animal in the title. And that kind of put Argento off. And he retreated into fantasy, as we said, Suspiria, Inferno. But after a while, he was like, look, I am the king of giallo. Fuck these guys. I'm coming back and I'm going to make the giallo to end all giallos.
So this was the king in exile coming back to reclaim his throne. He was sick of imitators. He wanted to come back and say, this is how you do it. No more animals in movie titles.
Exactly. But here's there's a little point of contention here.
Yeah.
Dario Argento himself thinks he is the originator of the giallo genre. I think Mario Bava would have a word with that. The Girl Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah, well, when was Crystal Plumage? Was 1970?
1970, Mario Bava's film, early 60s.
But the thing is, when do you, like, a genre like this, was there a definitive first one, or did elements start emerging and then it was eventually coalesced into a single film?
Are you making the argument, Wayne, that maybe, for example, Black Christmas wasn't a slasher film, but it led on to slasher films?
Yes.
So you could say that Bava's film was the influence for giallo without being a giallo itself.
Exactly. Like, if you have a film which has all of the characteristic elements of a genre, but wasn't called it at the time, is that the first film in that genre, or isn't it?
So you're saying you need the movement first before the film?
Well, it's like, say one movie is way ahead of its time, has some of these elements, but later on, one film popularizes it. Right. So even something like found footage, like some people forget earlier found footage, but everyone talks about things like Blair Witch Project, for example, because it popularized it.
It did. And as we mentioned there, Cannibal Holocaust, that's it's a hybrid film, narrative, found footage. There was the Blair Witch Project, but before the Blair Witch, there was The Last Broadcast, I think it was called.
Yes.
So Blair Witch wasn't the first. More infamous, though.
But anyway, whether or not he is the originator of giallo, like you say, this was his return to the genre. Can I just say, what a return?
Love it, Wayne.
Absolutely love it.
See, this was a first time watch for you.
This was for me, yes.
And this was second or third, and I was a bit anxious, a bit apprehensive. I knew you were a big fan of Suspiria, which you are.
Yes, I am.
And you're not overly familiar with his catalogue of films, are you?
No, not as much as you, of course.
But you loved Suspiria, and that's a good starting point, because a lot of people probably think that's the apex of Argento's work.
Yes, even though it's not even jolly.
And this, Wayne, it has its tropes.
Yes.
Has its hallmarks. Because, as we said, Argento, above all, is a visualist.
Yes.
Very stark contrast between this and Suspiria visually.
Very important you said that, because when we talk about visuals, we're not talking about anything bright or striking. In fact, Argento, purposely, he wanted the environments to be, he said, cold and austere. Because when you look at this movie, it's not a pleasant movie. This is shot in Rome, one of the most beautiful cities in the world. But we don't see anything like, for example, there's no Colosseum, no Spanish Steps, no Trevi Fountain. It's unglamorous.
I can tell you why, Wayne. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you know why?
Because he wanted it to be like, he wanted to show the dark underbelly?
No, I'll tell you, Wayne. Listen up, people. You said this is shot in Rome.
Yes.
But, Wayne, here's the important thing. Hold on to your seats, little man. Right? It's not supposed to be Rome.
Oh, yeah?
This is a non-specific town.
All right.
Do you know why? This is set in the future.
It was.
I had no idea about this.
I remember that. It was a future with a reduced population. Because when you think there's scenes in this movie, they're sat in like town squares. There's no one there. There's like 5 or 6 people
Very
walking
diminished.
about.
I'll get onto this, Wayne. I've got it in my notes. I've wrote down from the man himself. He said this was set in a futuristic and non-existent town. While they were making this, Wayne, he told his collaborators that this film is set 15 years in the future, where there is a very diminished population. Argento, it's never stated in this film, but Argento, the man himself, says the cause of this is an atomic bomb.
Oh, right.
It's not stated in the film, and the rest of the population has no memory of this event.
Right.
That's how he started off this film. I'm not saying The audience is supposed to know this, but this is kind of the world he's building in his own head to bring the film visually to the audience.
So what you're saying is it's an atomic bomb that caused amnesia in the survivors. Well, there's a sentence I never thought I'd say. But yeah, you're right.
Wayne, you
Yes.
never question the masters.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry, Argento. You go ahead with that. But like you say...
You tell him.
Okay, so so we're filmed in Rome, but he wanted it to be anonymous, a non-specific
It's
location.
a non-specific town.
Because we have realistic lighting, very natural, everything kind of cold, grey, ugly. Makes sense if we're talking sometime after this nuclear apocalypse. Everything looks, like we say, unglamorous. And I say, he insists on no famous landmarks to maintain that anonymity.
But you know how we're saying, you said it's non-descriptive, it's very futuristic. The architecture is modernist. This is the antithesis of Rome. When you think of Rome, as you said, you think the Colosseums, you think this, this ancient beauty. All these houses, and it kind of ties in with the bird with a crystal plumage. It's very modern. It's very sleek. It's almost got, in the UK in the 70s, that brutalist architecture style.
Like almost like kind of utilitarian.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
What a Clockwork Orange would show.
Because everything just seems so simplistic. Everything is square. Like this movie makes a lot of use of night shots, for example, walking along nondescript streets, going through nondescript town squares, where everything is, like say, kind of anonymous, empty, barely anybody there. Gives it that extra. That kind of
there is an eeriness to it.
There is an eeriness. That's the one. Yeah,
it's in many ways it's a haunted film. You're haunted from the start, and you're not necessarily knowing that, but you're building this picture visually, and you're thinking, something is off. This is an off-kilter world we're in.
Because we've had films like films where you would show terror and you would show fear by having someone in among a huge crowd of people, but this is doing the opposite.
Exactly.
This is feel like almost like you're kind of adrift, like you're floating in the ocean. There's barely anything around you.
You're cast out on your own.
Exactly. You're just kind of an anonymous being there.
So Tenebrae, however we want to pronounce it. It's Tenebrae, yes?
I say Tenebrae, yeah.
Right. The interpretation, the translation is darkness. Darkness, shadows, which it's juxtaposed here, Wayne. That's the title of the film. There's not much darkness in this film, visually. It's very overlit, would you say?
A lot of it is.
Very overlit. It's very bright.
Yeah.
It's not the kaleidoscopic, psychedelic look of Suspiria, for
Even
example.
the night scenes, did you think the streetlights were quite harsh?
Well, yeah.
It's like kind of very, very much beaming down on it.
I think that's intentional. That's what I'm saying. It's causing, like how we were saying about the absence in the world, the lights are off kilter themselves.
Yeah. And should we talk just briefly how this fits into the whole video nasty thing?
You tell me.
Just watching this, you would expect it to be on the video nasty list. I mean, the films we've looked at before, Cannibal Holocaust, obviously.
The main one, Wayne?
Yes.
It's Italian.
Of course, yes. Don't Go in the House, The Witch Who Came from the Sea, which we've covered before.
Yep.
Yes, there are elements which we look back on now and think kind of silly, but back then obviously freaked out. But I was reading an article, worldsgreatestcritic.com.
Okay.
Not full of himself there.
Are they actually great?
They're okay.
They're okay.
World's okayest critic. And it said, quote, Tenebrae is yet another huge example of why censorship is such a bad idea, particularly censorship run rampant, as was the case with the video nasty era. We're talked about censorship, not the biggest fans, unless we're talking real animal deaths, of course, in which case...
That's it. Inexcusable, yes.
Get rid of that shit. But you think, with the hysteria, you think they decide to ban a few things in a few films. Do you think that just grew out of control and that's why films like this got kind of sucked into that?
Yeah, Wayne, it's like we explained in another episode about, the satanic panic.
Yeah.
People get caught in this drift, don't they? And they end up going with the flow.
Yeah.
So it causes this mass hysteria.
It's like a domino effect.
And when you don't deal with the real issues, you end up placating and putting that onto something else, and it just tumbleweeds into this stupidity.
Yeah, we banned this. This is a bit dodgy. I guess we should ban this as well.
And this is like that, so just lump that in. We don't have to deal with that. You don't have to have any intellect about it. Just shove them. No. If the film looks similar, if it's made by similar filmmakers, that's it. Just push them all into one category.
Don't want people thinking we'll just ban it for them. And complaints here about it's higher than usual body count. Well, what's usual?
I don't know. What is usual?
Not even really a high body count. A highly sexualized presentation of its violent content. Yeah, but again, this was kind of what
Yeah.
Argento was playing around with.
This was his jam, wasn't it?
This it was his jam, yeah. And Thomas Rostock, filmmaker,
No idea.
he said, of all the titles placed on the video nasty list, Tenebrae is perhaps the most misunderstood and undeserving of the grimy status it gained through its association with the whole debacle. Because you wouldn't lump this in with the same
Cannibal
same thing
Holocaust.
as like Driller Killer or like Cannibal Holocaust. Or
Why, we
anything
love
like that.
Abel Ferrara. Leave Abel Ferrara alone. Just because he wants to kill with a drill, leave him alone.
I'm pretty sure that was just put on the list because of its name.
But no, this is very different. And like we've explained in all of our episodes during the Video Nasty controversy, and I think what kind of surprised us in a little way is how different and varied these films are. We don't have to bang on about it, but they're not one collective. Every film we have chosen, Which Came From the Sea, Don't Go in the House, Cannibal Holocaust, Tenebrae, extremely different from one another. When we've lumped them in with the Video Nasty list, this UK stupidity, it's not saying these films are alike.
No.
And that's what people need to understand. They are nothing alike each other. There's death, there's murder, of course. We're dealing in horror here.
Yeah.
But apart from that, there's not much linking them.
The only real unifying thing seems to be all of them outraged people, all of them offended people, and they got complained and they got them removed from circulation.
Right.
So that's it. It's just collective outrage. Funnily enough, when I was looking about the original release, I love this. The original 1983 VHS release had some footage cut. You know how much footage was cut? 4 seconds.
4 seconds?
Yep.
What was the 4? Do you know about the 4 seconds?
No idea what it was.
You have
and
no
it was
idea?
banned entirely in the UK until 1999. You know how much was cut out when it was released then?
Oh, how many?
Another second.
Oh.
Got to get rid of those 5
Do you
seconds.
think that second was worth it?
That second, obviously, that was very important. And
Jesus
also, fun
Christ.
fact, never been released in Germany. The German film...
Oh, that's right, yes.
The German Film Board of Classification just said, no, never going to release it.
Is the Germans quite harsh in their
They are.
censorship?
Not just movies, video games as well. Like a lot
Really?
of overly violent video games. Yeah, like Soldier of Fortune, things
Is this
like
like Fallout from the Nazi period?
that. It could have been, I
Are they
suppose
too
so.
afraid that,
Yeah, it's like almost like an overreaction. But yeah, like you say, we've done 4 films. This is our 4th film. All very different. The only thing that seems to unify them is that people didn't like them at the time. People were very shocked and appalled by them, we'll say.
We can say it, Wade. We can say it. We don't have to be afraid. We are of this nationality. British stupidity. Yeah, that's what it is.
Because we get to look at our own...
Yeah.
But it's, in a way, it's interesting because we get to see how our culture has changed over time. Like you say, the very reactionary types, your Mary Whitehouses at the time.
Hey. So Echo, you can't say British stupidity. we can only say the British stupidity.
We're free
Exactly,
to say
there you
that
go.
because we are the British.
We're jesting, Echo,
Yes.
of course.